Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're gonna do a Q&A once again. I have some questions that I just didn't include last time, but I already answered. The video was already too long, so I really just want to include them today. And also I have new questions from the new subscribers that I got last week. I don't know what happened. I think YouTube started to promote some of my videos, and that resulted in a very big increase of daily subscribers. So I would like to welcome you to my channel. I try to answer as many questions as I can, but there are many comments and I cannot really keep up with all of them. However, there are some questions which I like to answer in videos because I think more people will benefit from them. So if you have a question, leave it down below in the comment section and subscribe to my channel. I'll do my best to answer it as fast as I can. So that said, let us get to the questions. Next question comes from DV. You're asking if you can use seaweed liquid fertilizer in semi-hydroponics. I think you can do anything you want as long as you observe the orchid or the pot and see how it performs. If at some point you will have some biological buildup due to the chemical compounds not actually breaking down in what they're supposed to break down, you can flush the heck out of the pot and you're pretty much set. With semi-hydroponics, there's a lot of space in between the leca if you're using round leca, so I'm not sure if it's gonna help. I'm not sure if it's not gonna do anything. It's definitely worth a try if you have the product, if you spent your money on it, you can use it and see what happens. But if you smell strange aromas coming from your pot, just start to flush it because it means it's a biological accumulation due to the biological fertilizer. But you don't know if it's gonna come to that. So yeah, you can definitely try it, at least with one. If you don't wanna use it with all of your orchids, it's very wise to try it with one and see what happens. Next question comes from James, and they're asking about their Dendrobium aphyllum. They cannot really provide a winter rest for this orchid, and if it's possible to actually rebloom it even without a rest. And my answer is absolutely. I find that some of the deciduous Dendrobiums, which are known to have winter rests, they don't all require drastic winter rests. And being that I do have the aphyllum, it just bloomed really nicely this year, I can tell you that I didn't rest it all that much. Yes, there was a little bit of a cool down in my growing space, but it wasn't all that much. What I find most important actually is to completely cut fertilizer and use water very infrequently without any type of addition to it. Fertilizer, especially high nitrogen fertilizer, will actually encourage vegetative growth, and that's not what we want when the orchid should not grow vegetatively but should prepare the buds. So first of all, cut fertilizer. Second of all, depending on how much the pseudobulbs shrivel, cut down a little bit on watering as well. You should never ever just cut watering and never look at the orchid because you don't know how it's going to react. Some orchids do still need just a little bit of moisture. As in their natural habitat, they do still receive water through morning dew, through condensation, and so on. So do look at the canes. If they become very shriveled, water the orchid. If not, water as infrequently as possible. And even if you cannot lower the temperature too much, I still think it's possible to bloom them. And aphyllum is actually one of those easier Dendrobiums, which you can actually bloom even without a drastic winter rest. So I hope this helps and good luck. Next question comes from Lorith. They're asking what to do with a baby Vanda that they cut from a mother plant and it doesn't have roots, how to take care of it. Well, I'll show you on the screen some images. I pretty much like to put a little bit of sphagnum moss in a jar or a vase or something, maintain it moist, not soggy wet, but moist, and just place the orchid with the stem inside the glass. It can even touch a little bit the moss, it's okay as long as the moss is not soggy wet, everything is okay. And from there on, it's really up to the orchid. If the keiki is not big enough to produce roots, then it might not make it. If it has enough energy to produce roots though, it will try to produce roots from the base. And the technique with the sphagnum moss is my typical technique. I always use it with divisions, back bulbs, keikis, ceilings, and it has a pretty good success rate. If the orchid is okay, it's healthy, it's almost 100%. Action Jackson is asking on my summer blooming Phalaenopsis video if these plants are also known as moth orchids. Well, yes and no. Moth orchids are actually the store-bought Phalaenopsis, the flower shop, the fluffy flowered Phalaenopsis. But these are the species. In the parentage of those hybrids, you can actually find something like this. But these species are not necessarily known as moth orchids because they don't really have that shape. They're still Phalaenopsis in the very same genus, it's just a different subgenus. So depends how you look at things. I would say no, because moth orchids are what you call the standard fluffy looking like ones. Not necessarily these ones, which are not fluffy. They don't have a moth shape to them, more of a star shape, I believe. But they are the very same family of orchids, which is Phalaenopsis. Deb is asking if they should cut a split leaf. Now, I will presume that you mean a middle split leaf. If that's the case, no, you definitely shouldn't cut it unless there is an infection advancing on the leaf. But if the split is already dried, it looks green all around it and the leaf is perfectly fine, there's no need to cut it. Cutting leaves, I personally think, is only necessary when there is an infection advancing to the leaf. Even if the leaf is yellowing due to natural causes, natural shedding, I still don't cut it. I prefer the orchid severing and sealing off that wound itself. It's a lot safer and keeps me out of infection troubles. So for me, the only reason I would cut leaves is if I would have a serious infection attacking the leaf and threatening to take over the entire leaf. Alrighty, so Ela is asking a really interesting question that I don't think I ever talked about in my videos. I'll talk about it now. Maybe I'll include it in some other video because it is actually important. So it refers to falling of buds and even flowers on an orchid, but not evenly, not entirely. So as she's saying, some buds seem to develop while others don't. And also, while some flowers are still open or not open yet, some are fading away. So why does this happen and what you should do about it? Pretty much, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I don't think it's external factors. Let's exclude the bud blast due to cold drafts, hot drafts, not enough humidity, and so on and so forth. I will take a guess and say that the orchid you're referring to has quite a lot of flowers, not just 4 or 6. Maybe it's something like in my case here. We have a lot of flowers on the orchid with maybe quite a few branches. What's happening here is that the orchid cannot really sustain all of them. And there are 2 reasons for that. One of them is hybridization. We're trying to mix an orchid which only produces, let's say, 3 flowers or 4 flowers at once, with an orchid which can sustain a multitude of flowers, but maybe tinier flowers. So the end result of that hybridization, in simple terms, would be an orchid with too big of a flower to produce a big quantity of them. That's when we have bud blast, or flowers that fade while others are still opening and will never have a full display. It's just because of hybridization. So that's one. The second possibility, maybe the orchid is not actually in perfect condition to sustain all the flowers. Maybe it needs to have a more extensive root system. If it had a better root system, maybe the flowers would last better. But again, you have to assess the orchid in this situation. If the orchid seems absolutely fine and you have that type of orchid which produces a multitude of flowers, I would blame it on hybridization really. I really don't think you're doing anything wrong if the orchid appears to be healthy, you're watering it, feeding it regularly, it looks in tip-top condition. And the environment is not cold or very hot either. Next question comes from Lynette. She's saying that the dunking technique of watering Phalaenopsis works great for her, and she's asking if fertilizer should be applied in the same way. Yes, absolutely. In the water you intend to use with your orchid, just dissolve the recommended amount of fertilizer, dunk the orchid in, just keep it 10-15 minutes or however much you usually keep it, and that's it. You don't have to rinse, you don't have to do anything. Just make sure you follow the instructions and don't over-fertilize. Next question comes from Crafters. They're asking about a fertilizer with a high phosphorus content, which is a middle number expressed in the NPK formula. And they're asking if the middle number is too high and what do I think about it? Well, it might actually not be too high, depends how you will dose it. As a percentage, it's not uncommon. Bloom boosters usually have a middle or a last number which is very high in comparison to nitrogen content. As a personal opinion, I'm not entirely sure if bloom boosters do make a very big difference, Opinions vary greatly out there. You can find people using balanced fertilizers such as 10-10-10 and having no issues reblooming their orchids. You'll find people using MSU formulations like I am, and again, no problem flowering orchids. MSU formulations actually have high nitrogen. And then you'll have people who do use bloom boosters and swear by them. Everybody's different. The truth is in the middle. I guess that is always my mentality on things. I like to vary stuff, and as far as fertilizers are concerned, my core fertilizer is the MSU. I have great results, and at the same time I'm using Orchid Focus, not because I think it's the epitome of fertilizers or anything, but it does have humic and fulvic acids, and dosing that to orchids, I believe, helps them and improves their growth rate. I also use a sort of a no-name fertilizer. I don't have it now. It's a 20-20-20. It appears to have some acids inside it as well, has some minor elements. It doesn't have calcium and magnesium. That's the whole reason I purchased it, because with some orchids, I'm actually combining with tap water. With Vandas, with Catasetums, I will do this. With Phalaenopsis, these orchids require so much water that I think my osmosis cannot really handle it. They drink a lot of water, and I am in danger of actually not having enough water for my orchids. So for these orchids, I am actually using a combination with my tap water. Mind you, my tap water does not have fluoride or any other added chemicals. It's European tap water. It is medium hard actually, not really okay to use it on its own frequently, but it is pretty clean, does not stink of chlorine, I have to add, unlike the water I had in Romania, and it really doesn't harm my orchids. But because I do have medium hard water and I combine it to a certain point, I needed a fertilizer without calcium and magnesium, got one, and what I do is I rotate pretty much all the time. Why I do it? It sounds logical to me that sometimes orchids benefit from certain stuff in a fertilizer, other times they will benefit from other things, and maybe one fertilizer, depending on what you're using and possibilities, on the type of water you have, on the type of orchids, type of setup even that you're using, I believe one fertilizer might not be the ideal solution. Therefore, I just feel like a multitude of fertilizers used in rotation might actually deliver me a more complete menu. That's just my mentality. I don't have to be right. I just feel better doing this, rotating fertilizers, not using them all at once. And I don't actually recommend you do the same. It's just what I'm doing, and I like my results. I cannot say I'm damaging anything. I cannot say it's the best solution of all. It works for me, and that's what I think I should do. And sorry I got on a tangent here, but as far as your question is concerned, the combination of your fertilizer is okay, at least as far as I'm concerned. It looks like a bloom booster, and I've seen others with pretty much a similar ratio. It's up to you to test it out and see how it does. Sarah is asking if I dilute my 3% strength hydrogen peroxide, and the answer is no. If I buy a bottle with 3%, I'm gonna use it straight from the bottle, but sometimes I find 6% concentrations. They're not necessarily bad. I cannot guarantee they will mess up the root system, but it is a little bit of an overkill. So what I do when I get the 6% bottle, and actually I started to do this, it's more economical, I pour it into a spray bottle. You might have seen it in my previous videos. I pour the quantity in the hydrogen peroxide bottle in the spray bottle, and then I fill the same quantity of the hydrogen peroxide bottle with osmosis water, and I combine it with the 6% hydrogen peroxide, and that should give me a 3% concentration. That is what I use currently. It's more economical actually, and it works just fine. It fizzes, so it means it should get me rid of snails and eggs, fungi and other stuff that I might not want on my orchid, but also it is pretty gentle with the root system. And the last question for today, Monica is asking about her new Phalaenopsis Tetraspis C1. Apparently she did not have a good winter, and now the orchid doesn't really have too many roots. And Monica is asking what can she do to improve, or actually to induce, more root production. Well, the steps that you took so far sound very good to me. I too use sphagnum moss in order to maintain maintain that humidity around the root system. Many of the times roots stop growing because of the dry air, and sphagnum moss is just such a good alternative to maintain that humidity around the root zone. Also, I do believe the pH of the moss helps. I believe the texture is just so gentle with the roots, so even when they start to grow, they will not get damaged or bruised, or pretty much nothing will happen to them. So that's good. Now, being that the Dendrobium one is a summer blooming orchid or a warm grower, a lot warmer actually than the typical standard Phalaenopsis we have, I suggest that you keep it in bright shade, warm conditions, keep it away from cold drafts and things of the sorts. The air should be ventilated, yes, but make sure that the temperature is not really low. These orchids do better at temperatures of above 24 degrees Celsius, actually. They can absolutely tolerate lower temperatures. It doesn't really mean they like them. So if the orchid is stressed, you know, it's better for her to be in the warm side. And other than that, patience. I'm not a believer in total guarantee success. I don't think brands, products, people who guarantee success if you do something, you know, I don't believe they're right. We're dealing with live orchids. Even though 99% of the times, let's say something should work, if you water the orchid, it will get hydrated, there is that 1% chance that something will go wrong. It's not an object, it's not a phone, it's not a TV that just works because it works. It's a live thing, and many things happen apart from the ones we're seeing. Think about the chemistry inside the orchid, which we cannot see. It reacts with the environment, with what we do, with how we treat it, with the chemicals found in their pot and medium and so on. And these things are ever changing. So whatever you do, keep in mind we're just trying to improve something, not guarantee success. I don't believe anything can guarantee you success unless it's a black and white situation. But that's a totally different situation when we're fertilizing, when we're hoping for orchids to produce root systems and so on and so forth. I don't think anything can guarantee success. Not even cakey paste and hormones can guarantee success, let alone a company, product, or person. What we can do is improve, encourage, and give the proper conditions for something to develop. Next, it's the orchid's job. And that's pretty much how it is with saving orchids as well. You know that I have my technique with sphagnum moss. It works 99% of the times. 1% of the times, it's not up to me or the sphagnum moss, it's up to the orchid. So that said, let's end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you found it interesting and useful. And yeah, let me know your questions down below. I'll do my best to answer them. And you know the drill. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye!